Hey everybody, good to see you. Dr. Flight here. We're looking at product development, and so this is going to be a video on the product development process. And basically the idea is you want to create revenue for your organization. You see new products as a way to better satisfy a market need, but also see products as an opportunity for cash flows and to generate revenue that might not already be there for your organization. So those are new cash flows that you're going to realize as a result of launching new products. The challenge, though, is how do we create a new product? And so this is actually a really big field. There is an entire academic course devoted on new product development and the study of how products are created. And so there's a process involved with creating new products. And in this video, we'll briefly touch on 6 different steps that you would take to create a new product, starting with idea generation and going all the way through the evaluation of results after you launch the product. So let's just jump right into it and talk about these different steps. Step number 1 is the idea generation stage. And basically the idea is you want to come up with a lot of different new ideas that could eventually translate into a product. So where did those ideas come from? And so we talk about sources of ideas, and you're going to see, and you can pause this if you want, there's a whole bunch of different areas and ways, and there are a bunch of different techniques for brainstorming and coming up with new ideas and all of that. And so we're going to talk about a few of these today, and then we're going to move on to the other steps in the process. And again, each of these steps we could spend literally a week or two on each step, and so we clearly won't do that, but I wanted you to get an idea of what's involved in new product generation. So again, first step is to identify new ideas, and the sources for those could be your customer. Of course, we talk to customers a lot. We want to know what they need, what their troubles are, what their challenges are. And so there's a couple different ways we can do that, but listening to the customer, getting feedback from the customer is one of your most lucrative forms of idea generation for new products. Oftentimes we identify customers who are innovators. Remember, innovators make up the first 2 to 5% of our customer base. Innovators are often very good at telling us the future and telling us what we want to know in what they are going to want to need in the future or moving forward. So we also call these lead users because they're the people who lead the rest of the adopters, and they're the ones who try products first. So customer input obviously is going to be a big source of new product ideas. Other sources, though, exist too. So first of all, we have an organization, and we often might do research and development, so R&D, research and development, which would mean we have in-house engineers and scientists who create new processes and products in a laboratory. They often patent those, so they protect those intellectual properties on behalf of the company, which they can then use to create new products with. So it might be that we have a technology that we created, and then we make several attempts at products from that. So pharmaceutical companies do this all the time. Food companies do this all the time, like with flavors and things like that. Engineers do this all the time, where they create something new and then they look for applications for that new thing later. And again, that comes from internal research and development. Now, it may also be that you team up with other organizations and you form what's called a research and development consortium. Now, this is a little bit different, where we have a bunch of scientists, another company has a bunch of scientists, and they collaborate to come up with some new breakthrough. So sometimes it's not enough for one organization, sometimes we don't have enough mental resources to create what we need to, but we team up with other organizations and collectively we create a breakthrough concept, which we then share in our product development process across the organizations that are doing that. So this is like a consortia. NASA does this all the time. And again, think about problems that are really, really technically very challenging, where we need multiple inputs, and it's not just one company doing it, it's multiple companies that might do it. They create, through the consortia, a base concept, and then each company uses that base concept to spin off lots of new products. Okay, so that's another way we can create. So think about like these internal components for creating products. Something we could do. We could outsource. We could actually seek a professional innovator who can think about the problems, think about what we need. We can hire outside companies, kind of like an agency, who can help us develop new products. We could also look to, we've had this term in other areas of marketing, we could license the rights to technologies that have been created by others, which we could then use to create new products from. So let's say another company created a new chemical compound. We could use the right to that patent, like we could pay for the right to use that technology, and then that new chemical compound I could use in a whole host of new products that we do. Universities do this a lot, where a university researcher will create something new. The university will then lease that new thing out to others who can then use that technology to build new products. We have this term called brainstorming. All right, so get a group of people together and we think about the challenge or the idea and we throw out new solutions to it. We contemplate those new solutions, we narrow that list down, and out of this big brainstorming session where people are batting around ideas and building on ideas, we have a huge number of possibilities that we could then create. And so we take those possibilities and then we evaluate them. And then after we evaluate them, the ideas that came from collective thought can then be implemented. So brainstorming sessions or group think is another term that you might see. Last one we'll look at here is simply looking at other products, other competitors, and what the competitors offer, and how can we use what they offer to build a new product that we could offer. That's certainly something that we could do. All right, so creating a new product, sometimes it's called reverse engineering, when you take an existing product and you break it down, see how it was built, and then put it back together again. Using other ideas that have been out there can spawn new ideas that you indeed may have. Okay, so idea generation, lots of sources for new ideas, lots of ways we can kind of think about that process. Let's say though we're beyond that. Let's say we have some ideas. We may have 2 or 3 ideas that might be good new products. Next step number 2, is called concept testing. Concept testing is a research tool where we put the idea out and we gather information about what people think about this concept. So again, it's a research process where we describe the product and then we ask people to rate their likelihood to buy the product as it's been described. So we describe the product, we put a price on it, we tell what the product's going to do. This might be in a survey. We may have an example and customers look at it and then they evaluate the concept, how much they like it, do they think it's useful, do they think it's beneficial to them, do they think they would buy it. So intention to buy is kind of the big thing that we want to do. Now, nice thing about this is we can do different versions of the product or the concept, and we can have those tested all at the same time. So we can get an idea of maybe the best product components that would make for a good product that would be out there. Lastly, using this, as a tool to collect data allows us to develop a very early forecast for demand. And so we can actually take the data and we can estimate how many sales we would have of the product if the product were actually developed and created and moved forward. Okay, so that's step number 2, concept testing. Step number 3 is actually broken into a couple different pieces, but this would be product development. So we have the concept. The concept has been approved internally and externally by customers. So now we have to start actually developing like the physical product, designing, engineering it, creating that physical product while we create what's called a business model or financial model where we identify the costs and we project the revenues for this product. Because not only do we have to physically be able to make it, but it has to be something that fits into the organization's existing products. It has to be profitable. We have to identify the costs. You know, it has to make the benchmarks of like profit margin and return on investment that we would normally make with any type of thing that we're going to invest in. We also simultaneously create the marketing plan for this product. So in a marketing plan, we decide what the price is going to be, where it's going to be distributed, how it's going to be advertised. You know, we know what the product is, the positioning of the product, those types of things we start focusing on. And so concurrently, we're physically making the product. We're creating a business model or business plan for the product, but we're also doing the 4 Ps. We're identifying what we're going to do strategy-wise to promote the product and to distribute it and so forth. Okay, so one of the questions here during the physical development of the product is some more testing. And so sometimes we create the product, but we want to make sure the product actually works. So when we do that, we call that a prototype. And that prototype is an example of the product before it's in commercial production. So the product is in an early phase of development, and it works, but it might not be the final product. And we want customers to look at that and test it. So we have 2 different types of prototype testing. One is called an alpha test and one is called a beta test. An alpha test is when you have the physical product and you test it in a laboratory or inside the organization to confirm that it works. You're confirming tolerances, quality issues, those types of things, making sure that it does what it's supposed to do. A beta test is taking the prototype and having customers try it. Customers use it like in their homes and in their regular walks of life to confirm that it's what works for the customer, that it meets the customer's standards. So it's like a evaluation by the customer, and it's more realistic, right? It's more realistic test, and they will give feedback. If we need to make changes to the physical product, then that's when we get that feedback and we make those changes. So product development incorporates a lot of different pieces that are important. Okay, so market testing is a step that we also take inside here during the product development phase. Remember, we're testing the physical product with a prototype. What about the 4 Ps? We're creating a marketing plan. What about if we test the 4 Ps? So, you know, we've got the physical development of the product done. We're kind of moving forward. We've designed the market plan. Let's test the market plan to make sure it works. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll take the product, which can be in a small run production, and we'll launch it in one geographic area, one market, and we'll let it run for a month or 2. And we'll gauge the results of our marketing plan. And before we launch it to the entire country, we want to test it in a small space. So this is with customers, out in the public, on the shelf, with our real distribution plan, with the retailers that we've chosen, with the price that we've chosen, with the communication plan that we've chosen, the 4 Ps, but we're testing it before a full rollout or a full launch of the product, right? So several tests can be done. Again, this is more like a field test, which takes the place of putting the money into a big launch. We can practice everything before it's launched. Finally, this is another opportunity to forecast demand for the product. You remember we did that earlier with the concept test. Well, this is another chance where we can forecast demand and we can identify how many units we're going to actually sell. Okay, we launched the product. So this is number 5 of 6. We launched the product. This means we bring the product fully to the marketplace. There are some tweaks we can make here or there to the marketing mix, but by and large, we've already tested the marketing mix to make sure it's going to work, and so we go with that. Fully known, the market fully knows, the competitors fully know that this is coming out. There's a big cost and expense to doing this. This is an enormous expensive process up to this point. And this is all happening before we get really a lot of revenue from this product. We're not selling a lot of units, so we've got to launch it. We've got to line up our distribution. We've got to do all of that. That has to be done. So timing of the launch is very carefully coordinated with all of our marketing activities to make sure it all works correctly. And at this point, when we have the launch, then we start the adoption process. The product life cycle starts, or the product sales of that product start. The innovators, who are the first adopters, start buying the product. So think about that diffusion process, the product life cycle, the different categories of customers who buy your product. Well, right now we've got those innovators who are buying that product up, moving into eventually the early adopters and then the early majority and so forth. Okay, so then the final part, the final stage is evaluating the results. So at this point, the product's launched. We want to make sure the product is performing as it is. We want to think about the consumer's decision-making process and kind of how they're buying the product. Are they satisfied? Are we able to create loyalty, right, with the customers? How are the customers communicating with each other? Like when a customer tries the product, what's their social media like? What's the word of mouth like? What's the buzz like for it? At this point now, you're managing a product. You're managing the sales, you're managing the market, you're seeing how the competitors react to your product and seeing what they do. We're also looking at the numbers to make sure our sales are adequate at the price points that we have. And we look at our costs. I mean, everything is in place now, so we know what our costs are. We know what our profit margin is, and we're kind of moving forward. We have a marketing plan, so if we have to monitor and adjust anything in the plan, we do that. And we treat it like ongoing business at this point. Okay, so that's the last step. So again, kind of as you look at the 6 steps of the product development process, make sure you know each of the 6 steps. Ultimately, you should know them in order. You should know what happens at each of the 6 steps, and be able to just kind of understand and describe kind of the purpose of what they are. One thing we spent more time on than anything was this idea of sources of idea generation. So don't forget to review those different sources. There are several different sources, so just be sure you're comfortable with those. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I'm so glad you joined me. Taking notes and all the good things that you're doing there. Follow along in your textbook, and otherwise, have a great day.